If you've ever wished you had a podcasting pro with nearly a decade of experience whispering growth secrets into your ear, that's exactly what you'll get when you tune into Podcast Growth Tools with me, your host, Kylie Chandler. This is the ultimate show for you if you're ready to grow your podcast audience, skyrocket engagement, and turn your show into a traffic-driving, list-building powerhouse. I've been in the podcasting world since 2015, helping creators like Amy Porterfield grow their shows to over 1 million downloads a month. My superpower? Breaking down proven podcast strategies and marketing techniques into step-by-step guidance you can actually implement without fluff, overwhelm, or guesswork. On this show, we're getting real about what actually moves the needle when it comes to growing your podcast audience and using it to boost your email list growth. From actionable insights and expert interviews to behind-the-scenes secrets, I'll help you turn your podcast into a traffic-driving, list-growing machine. Grab your earbuds, hit subscribe, and let's take your podcast to the next level. So I know that I come to you each week on the podcast sharing strategies and then also interviewing other people in the podcasting industry, other entrepreneurs, all that good stuff. But have you ever wanted to hear me be interviewed? Well, you are in luck. I am actually giving you a sneak peek into a training that I did with somebody very special back in March. So I joined forces with Emily Holland of Wild Poppy Creative Co. And she is this brilliant, brilliant podcaster and entrepreneur in the podcasting space who supports podcasters, big and small, with getting sponsorships. And so her and I actually connected on LinkedIn. We hit it off and we decided to do this free training, this free masterclass, all about how to be growing your podcast through these really proven marketing strategies that I teach. And so I am kind of bringing you behind the scenes so that if you missed that masterclass, you still get to hear all the good juiciness of it. And Emily is so kind and so sweet, and she actually interviews me. And we talk all about all things podcasting. We talk about how to really set it up to be the main marketing piece of your business, how to set up funnels to drive people to your email list and then drive them to your offer. We talk about landing sponsors, even if you're not a massively huge podcast. She talks about how somebody that she worked with actually landed a sponsorship before she dropped her first episode. So anyways, she's brilliant. I hope that you find some nuggets that I share to be really brilliant and supportive for you. You're going to love this interview. So be sure that you listen all the way through to the end because it is literally rapid fire question that I was just pouring my heart into. So lots of good nuggets for you in this interview. And lastly, speaking of good nuggets, I would love to invite you to join my newsletter. It is not your average newsletter. It is so much fun. I dig into all things from podcast trends to marketing, funnel things and marketing advice to face cupping and really cute straw hats to what's been on the podcast lately, what's coming down the podcast, and just thoughts that might serve you as a podcaster, as an entrepreneur. So I would love to have you join me over there and I can bop into your email inbox each week. So join me at podcastmarketinghub.com/subscribe. And I would love to have you on my newsletter. You'll be also the first to hear about any exciting things coming down the pipeline. I have a lot of exciting things coming, so you do not want to miss out. Thank you for being here. If you have time and space, I would really appreciate if you could leave a review and a rating or share my episodes or my podcast with somebody who could really find these supportive in their season of podcasting, whether they are just starting out, whether they are more advanced. I'm happy to serve everybody and anybody who really has a podcast and is pouring their heart into this industry. So thanks for being here and enjoy the episode.
So, just a reminder of what we're doing here today. So, first of all, we want to understand, or we want to share rather, why email and podcast are so important, why they can support each other, why those functions are two really great engagement options for you with your audience. So, we're going to talk about podcast downloads versus email subscribers. What is the difference between those two places? And then, of course, the meat and potatoes of today, which is turning podcast listeners into email subscribers and vice versa. And we will have some time for Q&A at the end. But for the purposes of our conversation today, we wanted to keep it really informal. We want to have a conversation here and then allow for some questions at the end, like we said, but really have this be a space where we're chatting back and forth. And as things come up for you, you're able to, share those and get answers. So without further ado, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. Let's talk, Kylie, about why growing an email list at the same time as a podcast is important. Why do you feel like this is so important? Why are you bullish about this?
I am bullish about it and proud to be bullish about it.
Yes.
I think for so long, there was a podcast golden age, which is no longer. And that was maybe like 2020, 2021. Downloads were through the roof. It was like such a sexy vanity number that we were all paying attention to, but we didn't know what it meant. We didn't know who was actually listening and engaging. And then all of a sudden there was an iOS update and a couple other things happen, and now podcast downloads are slashed in half, and we're left going, what just happened? And so even if you're starting out a podcast today, it looks very different than it did 5 years ago. And so I always come back to how can we create super fans, raving fans? And even if you have 1,000 people listening to your podcast who are there every single week with you, that is so much better than having like a million downloads where you don't even know if they're actually downloading anything. But the reason that I think it's so important to get your podcast listeners over to your email list is because even if it's a hobby or if it's a business, you want to have a direct link to be able to nurture them, whether it is sending just a newsletter that's full of your thoughts, that's establishing you as a thought leader, whether it's a nurture sequence that's leading to a membership that you have, a low ticket offer, a high ticket offer, if you're a consultant, if it's leading them to like a discovery call, you want them to be in your world. And so while the podcast is such a great way to nurture them, if you can't like drop into their email and their inbox like that, you're not doing yourself the greatest service long term in your business. I know it's really easy to want to hire people to like boost your downloads and stuff, which there's a place for it, right? Like Emily's going to talk about brand partnership, that could be really beneficial for those things. But when we do dial into the longevity of a customer in your world and the funnel that they're going through, when you can get them on your email list, it's going to pay off so much more. You can essentially sell to them in a really big way. On top of that, when they're on your email list, you can start to notify them every time you have a new podcast out, every time you have new content. Like you have a direct link to be like, hey, by the way, and you get to give your newsletter a title that's really sexy and juicy to them. And they're like, I have to open this. I'm drooling. Now I have to listen to the podcast. So it's that constant reminder. So there's that. The other thing that I find is like, raise your hand if you create lead magnets for your business to grow your email list or anything like that. Or drop a one in the chat. Maybe that's easiest. We work so hard on these lead magnets, right? And at the same time, we're creating all this beautiful, beautiful podcast content. So why not use our podcast content to create our lead magnets and then create raving fans and create people who we give them a handful of episodes and they're about to go binge it. So that's why I love how they work together. That's why I'm such a big fan. You can literally you own your email list. We don't necessarily own our podcast downloads or our listeners. And so it's just that kind of got long-winded, but hopefully this is resonating. Is it resonating with you guys? Drop your favorite emoji to let me know.
Oh, I love a drop of emoji. Yes, Stevie, of course. Um, yeah, fire. Let's go. Yeah, and I almost think of it as like we have sort of a upside down triangle. It's like we have this top level of social media and the more like discovery channels that we sometimes utilize for our podcast and our business. And that is like awareness overall. It's not necessarily an engagement place, but it is awareness. So it is important to show up there in a capacity that makes sense for you sustainability wise. And then the layer down is like the podcast is engagement. It's where you're building trust. It's where you're developing this relationship with folks. And then email is where you can convert those people. And it's still a little bit of relationship building and rapport building as well. but that is really the sales driver as well. So I like that it's sort of like it's getting down to really like close connection with your audience member.
Well, and then can I send this back to you for a second, Emily? If you're working with somebody and you're looking at trying to monetize through a brand partnership, I would imagine that having a newsletter is a really sexy asset to have and probably potentially even more valuable than like the downloads. What are your thoughts?
Totally, especially with niche and indie podcasts, which I think almost everyone here kind of qualifies within that realm, right? We have niche audiences. We're talking about niche things for the most part. And any brand relationships that we enter with niche podcasters that we work with, we're always talking about the flywheel effect. And that includes like email, social, podcast, sometimes in person. And that feels like a way more robust way to be able to sell brand partnerships. And it's better for them because we're meeting the audience where they're at. Maybe they didn't hear that podcast episode today, but they're getting our newsletter on a monthly basis and they're opening up that. And then also maybe they're looking at our Instagram or the host's Instagram and checking that out. So we're sort of meeting them where they're at. So those other channels are super important to brand partnerships. And if it's just relying on podcast downloads, it can feel really disheartening to go into those conversations if you feel like those if they're not going to get where you're going with your podcast and it's a little too like niche and small for them.
Thank you. I love that. And I would love to hear from you guys. Let's go with drop a one again. If you have an email list, an email service provider already set up for your business, because I just want to know where we're at. Good. I
Got
love
lots of ones. Zero if you don't.
that.
Doesn't,
I think
yeah.
everybody does.
Sweet. Okay.
Bunch
Great.
of rock stars.
That's right. Yeah. Let's go, Jane.
Good.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about how these podcast metrics are kind of like they've sort of died as like the only metric that you should really be paying attention to. Can you drill in a little bit more there about like okay, what's the difference between a podcast download and an email subscription in your mind? Like what are the differences between those two, let's just say types of audience members?
Well, first of all, when I work with my clients, like I have a very robust metrics tracker that we're looking at that is so much more than downloads. In fact, downloads is like the fifth metric down that I actually like to look at. Because email marketing converts at like your ROI on email marketing is like, oh, was it 35 to like 50%, which is so high when you look at like social media or anything like that. Podcasts is not that high. And it's also harder to put an actual percentage on a podcast like ROI. I'll tell you this. If you think about how much energy time you put into creating a podcast, it's a lot, and I say that in a very loving way, right? It's always a labor of love, one way or the other. That's just how it works. Um, so when I'm thinking about these two things, it's like, man, if I'm having 1,000 people listen to my podcast episode, no, let's take it down. Like, what if I have 500 people download my episode in the first month? Like, let's think about that. Those are 500 people. Well, the downloads generally you're hoping they're actually listening to it. And I'm going to talk about some other metrics that I personally like to track. But when they're on your email list, like they rose their hand to actually be on there. Like they had to go in, type it in, and all that. Where sometimes, with our downloads, there can be some confusion with it. There can also be some automatic downloads that aren't actually reaching the ears and really serving the purpose we want. What I personally love to track is I love to see followers on Spotify and Apple. I always have my clients adding up every single week. You want to see that growing, right? You want those people to be engaged. Again, they're clicking the button. That means that they're there. I also love to do podcast unique listeners. Now, this is funny, but I'm going to slow down, take notes. What I consider podcast unique listeners are Spotify streams and Apple listeners, and I combine those two. So when I'm pulling metrics, I literally have Spotify for Creators and Apple Connect up. I know it's an extra step, but it helps me to understand my audience better. I also love to look at podcast starts on Spotify combined with plays on Apple. Again, it just like I'm seeing the whole thing here. I'm seeing all of it. And then of course I like to track engaged listeners from Apple. So you can see that on Apple Connect. If this sounds foreign to you guys, go and play around in Apple Connect. Go and play around in Spotify for creators. Get to know these numbers. And then lastly, I have podcast downloads. Okay. So those are like my podcast metrics. And then I go into obviously email growth week over week. Every single week, I'm tracking what my list size is, my net new subscribers, my unsubscribers. Like, I'm a metrics kind of gal, and I really, really hope you can find a way to be as well. And if you need to utilize ChatGPT to help you flesh all this out, please do so, but make a point to pull metrics once a week just to understand the health of your business. On top of that, when you go and work with, say, Emily or something, you have all this data that you guys can look through together and say, what looks really good to bring to these brand partnerships. So that was kind of a long way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Well, just like to drill down on metrics for a second, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes. It's amazing how many clients come to us and don't have any tracking of any metrics beyond just like what's in their podcast distribution platform. Like they don't track anything themselves. So if you're not doing that already, definitely have some place that you know that you will utilize and come back to. And I would say the last thing is that I also love looking at consumption rate in Apple Connect because directionally, that will give you an idea of how long someone's listening to a podcast episode. And if you're seeing like, 40 and 50% for every episode, you're simply not grabbing people enough and they're just kind of bouncing, right? So, of course, people stop listening to episodes all the time for so many reasons. They get distracted, whatever. So you got to take that information with a grain of salt, just like all of these metrics. But that's another good one to look at if you are going to go into Apple Connect and take a look at some of the metrics in there.
I'm
We can
so glad
definitely
you
talk.
brought that up.
Yeah,
I'm
that
so
one
glad
is
you
so
brought that up.
helpful.
Because the other thing I do, you guys, is once a month. Again, I really like to look at what an episode performs in 1 month. I just think it gives us a lot of information. I mean, people are busy. Like it might not happen the day of, it might not happen in the first 48 hours. But what I like to do is I actually download my Spotify and my Apple downloads every single week. And I input them into a Google Sheets that has conditional formatting based on Spotify starts, streams, listens, and Apple unique listeners plays average consumption, average listen duration. So it fleshes it out and I have red and green conditional formatting and then I start to see where the green episodes are popping up and I'm like, "Oh, they really like this one. Ooh, they really like this one." I almost wonder if I should do a training on like my tracking strategy. Give me a one in the comments if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm like, I want that actually. Okay, lots of ones. That's coming next. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this. How do we turn podcast listeners into email subscribers? Hit us with some of those best practices, Kylie.
I mean, there's lots of ways. The most effective way is through a podcast centric quiz. Who doesn't love taking a quiz? And on top of that, depending on your budget, if you do end up running ads to the quiz, your CPC is going to be significantly cheaper than most other ads that we're running, which is so great and exciting. Why? Because people love taking quizzes. And so, what I found really helpful is identifying like who are my ideal customers because you start with them. It's like bookend, you have two bookends. Who are my ideal customers? I am going to create basically quiz results based off of those people. It might be two, it might be four. I wouldn't do much more than that. The other bookend is where am I leading them? Like where do I want them to end up after they take the quiz, after they listen to my podcast episodes, after they go through my nurture sequence? Where do I put them? And so that could be just on your weekly newsletter. It could just be purely nurturing them to the point where they're like, I can't wait for your weekly newsletter. It could be a low ticket offer. It could be a high ticket offer or a masterclass that leads into a high ticket offer. It could be just getting them on a discovery call or a consultation call. There's so many things, but if you figure out those two bookends, that's where you start. And then we work out the meat or the veggie meat in the middle. And so basically, you put your people through this quiz, you deliver a personalized playlist. Be thinking, how can I make sure there's a path of least resistance here? So that means that you're going to have a results page that has all of the 10 episodes that you curated for them with a link to every episode in Apple, every episode in Spotify. And then if there's a third one you want, you can, but make it very user friendly, very, very pretty and clear where they need to click based on their platform. Another thing I like to do is if you have a spot, if we all have Spotify listeners, so go ahead and create a playlist for them so that they can just click on the playlist. It's already done. They can download all of it. So that's step one. So they take the quiz, they get to their results page. You also send them an email with their results and with that playlist again. From there, you drive them into a nurture sequence that not only drives them to that playlist a few more times, it offers them more free content, free resources, whether that's, hey, these are also some good episodes, or hey, I created this free resource that is exactly where you are and supports you, or I did this webinar here, go check it out, whatever it is. And then it's also positioning you as the expert, and it kind of sets them up for what's next. So eventually you move them into whatever the end bookend is. And then if they don't bite at it, you basically just say, here's what you can expect. I email every Tuesday. I'm giving you free content. I'm giving you good resources. I'm connecting you to this amazing community, whatever. So that is like creation of the quiz. It's big, it's bulk. I'm super happy to help you do it. If that's something that you guys are interested in, feel free to book a discovery call with me. And then on the back end of that, you have to essentially treat that quiz, which leads to your podcast, as a product. And so you create a promo week all around it. And I highly recommend running ads, even if you have a small budget, running some ads. But a quiz like this gets a lot of organic traction as well. So that's my favorite way to really like boost not only your podcast, but also your email list. And from there, I'm gonna pause right there. That's big and bulky. So I want to answer any questions that you have, Emily, about that, and then I don't know if you want
Yeah.
to put them in the question as well, and then I can talk about a few more.
Yeah, we got a question about this actually, which was my exact question, which is okay, say you're bringing people through this. What are your tools that you use for that? Like, talk technicalities here. Like, what do you use for the quiz that you like best? What do you use for the email sequences that you like best? Talk us through that.
Right. I really like Interact. I like Interact quizzes. I don't know if you guys have ever used it. It's great because it can be like a standalone page if you want it, or you can embed it like on the quiz page. Very easy to use, very user friendly, great analytics. And then you can connect it to almost any email service provider. And on the back end, obviously that's going to be your email service provider. And I'm not going to speak to those because like there's so many great ones out there, just depending on what you guys have. And since you are already have them set up, you would just link them up to that and then move them through your nurture sequence and then move them onto your master list. So you do want to be considering segmenting or tagging as well. Because here's the other thing I forgot to mention. What the quiz is going to tell you is like who majority of your audience is, right? Like if you have these 3 buckets of results or these 4 buckets of results and you see 1 or 2 that's like, 80% of the quiz takers are that, it's like, oh my gosh, I need to be creating content for these people. I need to be creating low ticket offers, high ticket offers, or whatever it is that you create in your business.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah, that
a
makes
tech
sense.
setup, to be honest.
Yeah, and it feels like the type of thing that it might be a lot of upfront work, but you can have it sort of as an evergreen thing that maybe you update like every 6 months or something like that, depending on what's changing in your industry or your offerings and things like that. So it feels like upfront, but then high reward afterwards too.
Yeah.
Hillary asked, and I have thoughts here, but are you creating an ad on your podcast every episode with the quiz? Or are you trying to organically lead people to the quiz through the episode content each week or in the promo week?
So it depends. Like during the promo week, you're going to be probably doing dynamic ads, driving people to the quiz. And then anytime that because even after your quiz is promoted, like Emily said, it is evergreen. And all you have to do is like, I just met with somebody before this and I'm like, once we're done with the quiz, which is a lot of work up front, you get to just like tweak it forever and ever and change it. And but it's already the foundations are built. So during your promo week, it is all about the quiz, just like it would be with any product you're promoting. And then outside of that, you're gonna find yourself naturally baking it into the content. And then maybe you pull it up for a social post X amount of times per month beyond your promo week. You set up a mini chat for it so people can comment quiz whenever they want and get to it. So that's really how it works is like having a I like to be really intentional about planning out dynamic ads. And during your promo week, it's going to be all about your quiz. You're going to have dynamic ads and baked in ads for it. And then beyond that, maybe you have a dynamic ad that is a brand that you were able to land. And so the quiz has to go away for that, but now it's the other one. So does that answer your question, Hillary?
Yes, I think I think you nodded your head. So that's great. Okay, cool. So someone asked, how can you set up the quiz if you only have 5 episodes? How can you curate a list of episodes if you only have a few? What would you say for this person?
Okay, this is a great question. Okay, whoever, I don't know if they can unmute themselves. Can you how many episodes are you dropping per week? Just one?
Yeah, it was anonymous, so I'm not sure who
Okay.
put it in.
Sorry,
Yeah,
it's me, Tracy. So yes, I do one podcast a week and I only have 5.
amazing. Okay. Well, here's something I will tell you guys is it takes a bit to build out your quiz. It really it does. And so if you can give yourself I mean it does, but you could go through it quickly. And if you ever work with me, I have like swipe files in the nurture sequence that you plug and play. But nobody needs like nobody is going to go and be like, "Oh, they're going to give me a curated list from 7 episodes." Like what's the point? They are going to want the content because on top of the curated quiz or the curated playlist, I recommend giving like extra juicy details depending on what your business is and how you can support them. So when you're creating your results pages, be thinking about their identity. Who are they? And how can I serve them? And then what are these results going to support them? How are these results going to support that identity and their desire? So you want to give them more than just the playlist. Like I recommend having like the playlist and then 2 other fun sections. So it's more than just like get a curated playlist. It's like get your okay, Tracy, I want to make sure cuz I've listened to your podcast, but I really want to make sure giving you a good example for like who you could be. So yours could be something about like it could be like a curated list plus a morning routine that could catapult you into the right vibration for the day, plus a quote to keep you motivated and a meditation or something like that. So you are giving them so much more than just the curated quiz and or the curated playlist. So does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much. And Kyla, I cannot believe you've listened to my podcast. I'm just on cloud 9. Thank you.
Well, I love your I think I really like your title and it was just it hit me at the right time at the right day and I was like I got to check out this lady. So,
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's say that a quiz is not for someone right now. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth to like get this all set up or the resources to invest in someone to get it set up. What would be another way, in your opinion, to bring podcast listeners into the email list?
yeah. So honestly, I recommend like every single episode that you are releasing have a baked in ad that's like go to my website, you can do a free resource, you can drive people to a discovery call. You can just invite them to subscribe to your newsletter. I had a beautiful conversation. So I drop an episode with Amy Porterfield next week on my podcast. I'm so excited. And she is, by the way, she's like retiring online marketing made easy and dropping a new show. And we talked all about it. So be sure you tune in. But she talked about the rise of branded newsletters and how people are having just like one page on their website that's devoted to a branded newsletter that feels very like just full of juicy content. It's like directly for their ideal customer and it's supporting like what they need and everything. Anyway, so she just said that that's really on the rise. And so if you have something like that, you can be promoting that on your podcast. So on your podcast, you're going to be doing baked in ads with those. You can do dynamic ads if you want to switch up the lead magnet. That is certainly a way you can do it. If you're like dynamic, huh? Don't worry about it. Just bake them in. Bake in means just read it, talk about it as you're organically reading your content. Another way that I love to do this is by using MiniChat, or if you have a small following on Instagram, just doing this by hand. You don't need to pay MiniChat to do it. And you do, you see like the comment. Do you want to say something, Emily?
Tell people what ManyChat is if they're not
Okay.
familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Perfect. That's where I was gonna go. Have you guys ever seen on Instagram somebody says like comment podcast and I'll send you my episode? Raise your hand, put a one in the comment if you've seen this. So they basically set that up on MiniChat and it's like an automated DM. It's automated DMs basically. So there's a trigger word and then you set it up on the back end and then it automatically sends like this whole conversation to be having with this person. And then you can send your podcast, you can send a free resource, all that stuff. But if you have a small audience, you can literally do this by hand. And I actually prefer when you have a small audience to be doing this by hand because you can actually get into like a conversation with these people and be like, hey, what episodes do you want to hear? What has been helpful? Oh, you want to get on a discovery call? Great, let's do it. Oh, you want this free resource? Here, I have it. So I love that. If you have a small audience, don't underestimate the power that you have to create super fans from the very, very beginning. But you can literally just pretend like you have MiniChat and say, like, here's a clip from my podcast. And then on the book end of maybe a reel or if you have like stories or something. Instagram is not my biggest thing, I will be honest. So, but I do use the mini chat strategy. Comment and podcast, and then you can send them your free resource along with your podcast episode. But I skipped a step. So when they do comment that, what you want to do is send your landing page. So they have to sign up for your free resource. So that's a great, great way. The other way is put a one. I feel like we should do something else. Put whatever you want to put in the chat to tell me if you go on other people's podcasts or if that's something that you want to be doing.
Mm, this is one of my favorite things. Stevie, I love that you're just consistent with this emoji. Yes.
I love it
Yeah.
because what you can do, I highly recommend, especially like the strategy I would say for getting on other people's podcasts is go into your category, look at the top 200 people and then start kind of towards the bottom and work your way up because the top people, A, are going to be difficult to get on for the most part, and B, aren't always going to share with their audience. But those people who are further down, but still have some juice in the game, some play in the game, I guess, they are going to be more excited to A, you come to them, you're a good fit. I would love to have you on. And oh, you want me to co-market and share this with my audience? Let's do it. But before you go on, be like, hey, I'd love to provide your audience with a free resource. Would that be okay? Yeah, awesome. All right. It's going to be www.podcastmarketinghub.com/playbook. And then when you guys are talking at the very end, you promote it. And that's a great way to tap into other people's audience to grow your email list. And then in that freebie, make sure you have like next steps. Go subscribe to go follow my podcast.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
hopefully I
okay.
didn't have way of describing that.
No, so there's two things I just wanted to touch on for podcast guesting. I think it's really nice when you can go in with the free tool of like your audience. I know that they would really appreciate this. Like I've listened to a few episodes. I know that they're going to vibe with this free tool that I have. And that's like giving value to the podcaster because they're bringing value to their audience. Then secondarily, I just wanted to mention, you kind of mentioned this a little bit about giving a free discovery call away. So some sort of like giveaway. Again, I'm always bringing it back to brand partnerships, but that's a great value add for brand partnerships as well. So if you want to do a giveaway with some cool product or service that you know your audience will absolutely love, that's a great way to bring people into the email list as well. But just making sure, because we know that giveaway emails aren't always as bought in as as maybe an email for like a free tool or something like that. We do want to make sure they're welcomed well. So having that welcome sequence after is especially important for all of these things, but for a giveaway in particular, giving them the opportunity to get to know what the list is all about, what the opportunity is all about. So we've seen that do really well with our clients as well. And it's quite fun because you get to send someone something and then they're like psyched and they're like, oh my God, I never win anything. This is incredible. It's just like a nice audience moment as well.
Emily, I'm so glad. Yes, you please have a welcome sequence set up. It doesn't have to be crazy long, but part of that welcome sequence, because people might find you not through your podcast, they might find you from a website or a Pinterest post or something. Have your podcast as a huge part, like have an entire email that's just devoted to your podcast in that welcome sequence.
Yes, definitely. And every email provider basically has this opportunity now. So you should be able to just automate it, set it and forget it and just tweak it every, 3 to 6 months or something like that. So again, like upfront work, but payoff is there. Okay, we only have a few minutes left somehow. We got through 3 of our 12 questions. So there are some questions in the slideshow. So I do want to make sure we're hitting those. All right, let's do this potentially rapid fire. So someone asked, I started my email list before my podcast. My list is small, under 500, but they're highly engaged, small but loyal. Looking to grow and nurture both. Any tips? I do feel like, yeah, like we have talked a little bit about this already, but this was an earlier question. Um, any other tips that you want to share, Kylie, about bringing them both up?
Yeah, I love this. And hopefully you are notifying them. First of all, I like 500 people on your email list. Like, imagine if they like got on your doorstep and were like, hey, by the way, we really like what you have going on. We'd love to learn from you. Like, if you wouldn't be overwhelmed, yikes. So that's amazing. Love up on them. And I'm so glad that there's a great open rate. Make sure that you're notifying them of your podcast and try to make it like very story based, like make it very interesting. If you're not doing this already, emailing them weekly, or if that doesn't feel good, you can do like a monthly roundup of your favorite episodes plus some stuff. So that's a really great way to do it. And then if you are doing that branded newsletter, then you can start driving people directly there from your podcast, from your dynamic ads, from MiniChat, the MiniChat strategy. Amy Porterfield, she was like, people are driving ads directly to that page as well. So that if that's in your budget, that could be something to do as well.
Yeah, and like we talked about briefly, like podcast guesting is so important for just consistent growth over time. So like if you could even give yourself, depending on the time that you have to do something like that, go on one podcast per month. Like that can make a difference over time. So yeah, that's a really helpful thing for both sides of it because you can get people into the email list, but you can also pull them over to your podcast universe as well.
One thing to think about though is like try and get past. Okay, so like start planting the seed to get on other people's podcasts now, but keep in mind that the earlier as a podcaster you get on somebody else's podcast, the fewer episodes you have to offer somebody to binge when they
Mm,
find you. So if you can like get past the 10, 15, 20 mark and then somebody goes over and then they can binge 20, they're more likely to stick around versus if you have like 3 or 5 and now you're going on a podcast and it's like, "Okay, this is great." And then they kind of forget because so something to just keep in mind.
definitely. Yes. Love that. Okay. Someone asked, how are you searching for the top 200 podcasts in your industry? What do you use for that?
Oh, okay. So everybody take your phone out. I'm going to try and walk you through this. So open up Apple, scroll. Okay, so you have this. Scroll all the way. Oops. Go to browse. Do you see browse on the bottom? Okay, now scroll down to browse by category. Okay. And then scroll over and then you'll start to see like for instance, I'm in business. I'm also in education. Like you guys should have set your podcast to be in categories, right? So you can pick like 3 categories or something like that. So you're looking at those categories. Like I'll go into business and I'll actually go to marketing. So then when I click on business, there's more in business. And then I can go to entrepreneurship and look at the top 200. I can go to marketing and look at the top 200. Um, and then I can go to education. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
that
and
well, it
make
makes sense
a
to
list,
me.
like make a list from what's that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, I was muted because my dog is deciding that Amazon is evil. Um, yeah, no, that's really helpful. And I would also just add that most people that talk about podcast guesting, it's like they really only want to go on their category that they like themselves are in. And what I would recommend is like maybe 60 to 70% are in that category, but then there are tangential things that could be helpful for you. Like maybe a lot of your audience members are parents, and maybe you have something to say on like a parenting podcast that's not directly related, but like, those people will vibe with your thing too. Or maybe you're really into running, but it's not your main business. And so you going on running podcasts, sharing your story. So just adding a little bit of variety too, I think it makes it more fun for you as a podcast guest, but it also like builds out the potential for audience to come into your zeitgeist.
I love that. Such a great point, Emily.
Okay, someone asked, "What's the best way to get on other people's podcasts?"
You want to talk
Yes,
about this?
I'm happy to. Yeah, I think you talked about it a little bit before, but um, podcast guesting is, I think, an art and a science. So if you build your sort of list of like dream shows that you want to go on in those categories, 60 to 70% in your exact category, maybe a couple others outside, tangential, building you as a multifaceted human. Build that list and try to find those people's contact information. So, not their contact form necessarily. I would go try to find like their email or something directly that you can reach out to them. If they have a flow for like guests coming on their show, definitely do that. But maybe like connect with them on LinkedIn as well and send them a little note there. But any podcast guest pitch kind of takes the same approach that I would take with a brand partnership pitch, which is the sandwich method that Kylie talked about before, which is, the bun of the sandwich is talking about them, their show, why you like it, what you got from it so far. Make sure you know what the show is about. Be thoughtful, intentional, even if you listen to 3 episodes on 2 times speed, just to like make sure you understand what they're talking about. And then the middle, the meat or veggies, whatever you're into, is about like what you're bringing to the show, like why you as a guest of the show. And that might be that you have that free tool that you really want to share with their audience. You think they're going to get a lot out of that. Maybe it's that you haven't seen a lot of stories from women on their show, but their audience seems to be like mixed. So maybe sharing something about your female journey. These are bad examples, but having that sandwich as a guest pitch is really nice because it shows that you give a shit about what the audience needs and also what the podcaster is really trying to do with their show. So yeah, prioritize email as a direct link. If they have a process for their guesting, try to do that, but still connect with them on those other sites, whether it be Instagram, whatever your main site is, LinkedIn, Instagram. I don't do TikTok, but if you're on there, I guess do that. Yeah, that's what I would say for getting on other people's show. Kylie, do you have anything to add?
I would all that I would add is I love that. But I would also, if it makes sense, potentially offer like a podcast swap. So let's collaborate in some way. Like make it a collaboration opportunity if it makes sense. People love that. I mean, yeah, collaboration. It's this year it's all about collaboration. People are excited to be on each other's podcasts and support one another and tap into one another's audiences. So lean into it.
Yes, that's what we're doing right here. Yeah. So as an example of guesting, so Kylie and I met, we were in each other's LinkedIn's, I think, like parasocially connected. And then I was like, this girl seems cool. So we connected and then we came up with all these ideas of like how we could collaborate and stuff like that, this being one of them. But also, one of them was going on Kylie's show. And we had just released a new free tool that people could use. And so it lined up perfectly for me to be like, oh, I could also just offer that up to folks if they want to like learn more about the brand partnership process that we've used. So that's just an example to call out for those types of collaborations, and always doing it with that, like, what's the win-win? The win-win-win? What do you get? What do they get? And then what does the audience get? So if you think about things in that way, I mean, there's not to keep using the win or lose thing, but there's no way to lose in that situation if you're coming at it with that thought process.
I love that.
Okay, we're a little bit over time. I think we got through most of the questions here. So, are there any others that we can just pop into the chat for right now? We have maybe 2 more minutes. We can probably answer one. Um, yeah, any others in the chat that you want to share? And I feel like we just scratched the surface on a lot of this stuff. So there's so much here. And obviously, Kylie has a great podcast. I've already put it in the chat, but maybe we can put it in there again all about, podcast marketing, growth tactics, and it's very tactical and inspirational. So highly recommend going to subscribe for that. Thank you for joining, Hillary. Appreciate it. Okay, best sources to read and learn about email plus Kylie's podcast would be the best source to read and learn
Come
about.
on over.
Yeah, I've listened to that and then implemented some of her tactics like immediately, and it makes a big difference. So totally recommend going over there. Well, thank you. This is a very quick and dirty introduction, I guess, to both of us and some concepts with podcast and emailing. We hope you got value from this. We'll be sharing the recording as well if you want to go back and listen to anything. And feel free to, like we said, go and subscribe to Kylie's show for sure. And thanks so much for joining. Kylie, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. If you guys want to hop on a discovery call at all, feel free to visit my website, podcastmarketinghub.com. But I'm just excited and so grateful for you guys to be here. And I can't wait to see what you do. Please keep us posted.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Everyone, have a great Thursday. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.